As the old adage goes, everyone's a critic, but tonight we're connecting with a woman who has made a name for herself meal after meal. So how does author Alice Levitt decide where to dine? She's dishing all the details tonight. For many, she is the go-to food guru. Her opinion is valued by Vermonters, and we are excited to have experienced eater Alice Levitt here tonight. Alice, thank you so much for being here tonight.
I'm excited to be here against the blue screen.
Oh my goodness, you are probably one of the busiest ladies in the business. You've just come back to your stint at 7 Days after a 3-month hiatus?
3 months sabbatical, yeah. I took 3 months off because I took a year to write a book, which was really stupid while I was working full time.
That's impossible because your mind has to be going in so many different directions. You're trying to focus on your work at 7 Days. You're also busy with your work at WCAX. Then you have a book on top of it, which we're going to talk about in a bit. But let's go back to the beginning. Where is home for you originally?
I'm from Greenwich, Connecticut, originally.
Very nice. So you certainly weren't shy of any wonderful restaurants in the New York City area.
Right, yeah. Greenwich, people have money but not a lot of taste when it comes to food. But once you get right out of there, even into the suburbs like Portchester, New York, heavily Peruvian, and so I grew up eating a ton of Peruvian food. So I really got a very diverse education growing up.
Now this must start at home. Do you come from a family of foodies, food lovers?
It's interesting. My mom has no sense of smell. So she really can't taste anything. She's famous for her 7-day spaghetti. She'll just make spaghetti and eat spaghetti for 7 days. So I had to learn to cook very early.
That's interesting because we have, growing up in an Italian household, we have what's called the 7-day sauce, but usually you eat it on the 7th day, so it simmers.
This is a lot sadder than that.
So you really taste everything even if you don't want to at that point.
Right. Well, so I'm one of 3 kids. My eldest brother grew up to be a chef.
Okay, wow.
The middle one eats nothing, like my mom, but even less. He was a pizzatarian for many years. Now it's pretty much veggie burgers with no bun.
Okay, low carbs, right?
And then there's me, who eats everything too. And so my eldest brother and I grew up cooking for ourselves from the time we were 8 or 9.
Wow, so you started in the kitchen at an early age. Obviously, being a cook, you really need to try what you're about to taste. So you have to have a favorite dish that you make. What's your favorite dish?
Oh gosh, that's really hard. I've often thought, what is my specialty? And I don't know because it changes every day. I've been working with shiso a lot because I'm growing shiso at home. It's Japanese mint. And it's really closer to cilantro though in flavor profile. It's very, very bright. And so I've been experimenting with different salads with shiso incorporated. And so you don't see it among the greens. And you just have this surprise of like a Klieg light being lit onto your taste buds.
But almost the cilantro taste.
Right.
Interesting. Okay, now I wouldn't even know where to find that. I know that there's cilantro, there's parsley. Where would you find
probably shiso?
Shiso. Okay.
S-H-I-S-O. It's something that I grow myself, so I don't really know where to buy it, but probably Asian markets would be best. They tend to be pretty expensive, the leaves, though. They're big, spiny-looking leaves, and they're not inexpensive unless you grow them yourself, and they're very easy to grow yourself, so I recommend that.
See, I love this. This is such an experience for me, and I'm sure the folks at home as well. I like to say I'm a by-the-book cook. I can't experiment with flavors. I can barely even read a recipe, so this is going to be a very fascinating conversation we have.
I'm the opposite. I don't bake because measurements just freak me out. I can't stand being held down like that. I feel like I'm in recipe jail.
That is something that I feel most comfortable with. I'm not a numbers guy, but I like to follow a formula. Is there one food that you have absolutely no desire to try?
Oh gosh. Well, I was never that excited to try balut.
Okay.
Which, are you familiar with balut? It is a fertilized duck egg.
Wow.
So there is a baby duck in there, and I happened to try it at an event at Four Quarters Brewing, last summer. There was a Filipino dinner that was all spread out on leaves on a table, and it was lovely, but the balut tasted like garbage water with the fetus in it, and that was not good. I wasn't that concerned about the crunch of the bones. It was really more the garbage flavor.
Wow, so there was actually a texture association along with this.
Oh, there are little
nasty
feathers. It's not for everybody, and it's not for me.
So we're not talking a typical egg. Where would you find this? Where did you
Well, it was at Four Quarters Brewing that there was a pop-up dinner last summer. So it was right in Winooski that I ate that. But it's a Filipino thing.
Wow. Okay. That's something that I won't try. Thank you. You're going to steer me in a different direction hopefully soon. So
yeah,
as
you
we
can
said,
make a list of do's and don'ts after we talk.
Exactly. So as we said before, you are super busy. 7 days, the book, TV work. Let's take a little radio as well. Did not know. What do you do on the radio?
I do WVMT every Wednesday. I'm on Charlie, Ernie, and Lisa.
Excellent. Wow. So you are pretty much the queen of all media.
I am the queen of all food media in Vermont. Yes.
Okay. So you won't have to be stepping on Howard Stern's toes or anyone. You're in your own lane.
Well,
right?
He'll be retiring in the next few years, and then hopefully I'll be talking to Bigfoot and Beetlejuice too.
There's a roll at it. So let's go ahead. We'll take a look at Alice in action.
Hi, I'm Alice Levitt. I'm on Church Street, and I'm going to eat everything here. I've worn some stretchy clothes because I will be expanding. I'm here at the Texas Roadhouse, where I am going to be very ladylike when I eat all the fall off the bone ribs that I can for charity. You have fried plantains instead of fries. You have pulled pork, jerk pork, so there's a lot of cinnamon, it's kind of spicy.
Okay.
And you have a sauce made out of split peas.
Interesting.
So you walk in, and the first thing is obviously you notice the decor.
Yeah!
There you are in your glory. I feel like I need to take an antacid just watching that. So very well done. You look like you have a blast doing what you do.
I really do. I grew up as a performer. I was a kid actor in New York. And so now I get to combine my performing and my eating. I've always been obsessed with food.
Perfect. So it's competitive performance eating, if you will, right?
Well, I'm not really competing unless I'm doing something like that rib challenge. And I realized my jaw just isn't strong enough to compete.
Okay, so you don't have to. Just do it at your own pace. We won't pressure
Exactly,
you.
yeah, I can't be timed.
So let's talk about how you pick the places that you review. A lot of times you're trying out new places, but you also go to some pretty established eateries. How do you decide, yep, I'm going to write an article on this place?
Well, we generally do a full scale in the paper review about a new place about a month after it's open.
Okay.
Between a month and 3 months, depending on how it seems to be growing.
Sure.
If they need a little extra time, we give them a little extra time. And
That's fair.
sometimes it's still not the best review in the world, but for Alice Eats, which is the blog reviews that I do, it's a mix of new places and places that are new to me and that I think are interesting in
Very
some
nice.
regard.
So let's talk a little bit deeper on that. How do you rate a restaurant? Is it food? Is it the atmosphere? Is it the service? Is it a culmination of all those elements?
They do combine, but I think as a critic, I'm very lax about atmosphere.
Okay.
I love holes in the wall. So
Interesting.
a lot of my favorite places are just Asian markets where it's hot and people are kind of unpleasant to you, but the food is great, and that's
Perfect.
really what matters to me.
Awesome.
But when I'm doing a review of a nicer restaurant, it definitely plays into it.
So when you go to these restaurants, are you Alice Levitt or are you completely anonymous? Do you make yourself known when you walk in the door?
In Vermont, I can't make myself completely anonymous.
That's true.
I could do the wigs, but people would say, "There's Alice in a wig." And, you know, I have a weird walk, so even if I just totally covered myself up, they would still probably say, "Oh, there's that weird walk." So, I cannot be anonymous, but I try to be as inobtrusive as possible. I make the reservation not as myself. I make it in a different name.
Interesting.
And I don't say, hey, it's me, or anything like that. And so I just do what I can
Sure.
to be as anonymous as I can.
So you stand out, people know who you are. Let's talk about your brand. How does one build a brand and become an authority? I mean, there are so many people out there these days blogging and on social media, but how have you made this enterprise work for you and the community as well?
Well, I just work a lot,
Yeah.
for one thing, so you can't escape me.
Sure. That's
so
huge.
that definitely helps, but part of it is I grew up doing this.
Yeah.
I've had headshots since I was 10 years old, and so I know how to market myself. I know how to package a brand.
You're so present. Social media is huge. What other tools do you rely on? Obviously, you have your website, you have social media, word of mouth. Anything else that you do to promote yourself?
Really, it just is doing good work and making it about my experiences because people do trust me.
Okay.
I feel like I really have a rapport with my readers, and when I meet people, and pretty much every day someone comes up to me to talk about a particular restaurant or something that I wrote about or talked about on TV, it's very personal.
I can imagine. And let's talk about that for a moment, because I'm sure in your position that you make plenty of friends. People say, oh, that's Alice, I love Alice, she's gone here, she's gone there. But I'm sure there has to be some sort of pressure in this job as well. If you write a bad review, there might be backlash. Have you ever
Right.
experienced any sort of backlash?
Oh yes,
You
yeah,
have? Okay.
I've had lawsuits threatened.
Wow.
Yeah.
For slander or?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
People have said that I closed their businesses. It's gotten very high stakes, and it makes you feel awful, but it's my job to service my readers, not the
Wow.
restaurateurs.
You're absolutely right. And high stakes, no pun intended, but how did you avoid this conflict? Did you tackle it head on? Do you approach the person? Were you approached by a lawyer? What
Well,
has happened?
often it is our lawyers or our higher up editors or founders who deal with that. I'm just kind of on the outside of it. But definitely I have our ad people angry at me a lot because it's their job to sell ads to everybody, and I definitely have caused some people to never advertise with us.
Wow.
But I also bring in a lot of ads, so
That's the thing.
it goes
It's
both
a
ways.
ebb and flow, right? So our viewing area, obviously we hit Vermont, we hit parts of New Hampshire, we hit parts of New York, even a little bit in southern Massachusetts.
Hi, southern
northern
Northern
Massachusetts,
Massachusetts.
excuse me. So if you had to pick, I'm just going to ramble through the geographical areas. If you had to pick your top 2 restaurants in the Northeast Kingdom, what would they be?
Oh gosh, the Northeast Kingdom. I definitely would put the P&H
Okay.
in there, the truck stop that has excellent desserts and some very interesting burgers
Huh.
from meats you might not expect.
Now, for those at home, where exactly is that located?
Oh gosh, I always forget the town.
That's okay.
It's
We could look it up.
it's yeah, southern.
Wells River?
Wells River.
That's-
Good
there we
job.
go.
Yes, it is in Wells River.
Very nice. So that's one, P&H.
Yeah, and then probably in the Newport tasting room.
Okay.
There's all sorts of cool stuff, but there's a pub there owned by the people who own Eden Ice Cider.
Interesting.
And so that makes its way into a lot of the food.
Interesting. Okay, so we tackled Northeast Kingdom. Let's go to the southern part of the state.
Southern part
2
of
restaurants
the
from
state.
there.
Gosh, that's a really big area.
Huge.
So I can't not include Curtis's.
Okay.
So we have to include old school barbecue
Nice. Okay.
outside, so it's summer only.
Really? Okay.
And then, oh my goodness, probably Barrows House in Dorset.
Interesting. Okay.
They, that was something that I visited for the book.
I was just going to
that
say, yep.
It was totally redone, I believe, in 2013, and it's an old parsonage that's just a beautiful resort now, but the restaurant does some really interesting stuff. They had the best wings I've ever had, duck wings that were
Wow.
confit and then
Oh my
fried. So they
gosh.
fell apart inside and were crispy outside in a sweet, spicy sauce.
That sounds phenomenal. So let's talk about when you sit down to eat. do you have to clear your mind of all the senses? Do you do a meditation? Should a meal speak to all the senses?
Well, it should speak to all the senses to some degree, and probably some that we don't define as much too. But definitely, my boyfriend is a smeller. He really likes to smell the food before he eats it, and people are always horrified. But I really respect that. You do need to really get all of those senses. And so the eyes, sure. I'm also very forgiving about that. If it's ugly, I don't really mind. If it tastes great.
Certainly.
And if you hear something great, like a bibimbap, a Korean bibimbap, when you hear the rice crackling in the stone bowl, that makes you hungry.
Oh my gosh. Snap, crackle, and pop.
Exactly.
Right? So, now, you talk a lot about Asian food, Asian influenced food. What is your favorite type of food? Is it Asian? Is it something else?
I think it's probably Korean.
Interesting.
Korean is really big for me. I always say I remember those days growing up in Korea in Greenwich, Connecticut. But I really loved bulgogi from the time I was a little kid, and so that's very defining to me. But I also was obsessed with Medur Jaffrey as a kid, so Indian is huge as well. And those are both things that we don't do very well in Vermont.
That's
so
true.
I do travel.
You do. So you do. Now, where would you go outside of, obviously you're based in the Burlington area. Do you find yourself on the road a lot for personal pleasure outside of
as
business?
much as I can, I just did a Montreal guide for tastingtable.com, and so that gave me a nice little excuse to go up to Montreal and do a bunch of eating. But I also do a series, Buffet Montreal, for 7 days.
Nice.
So I figure ways around it.
You certainly do.
Going to Boston and New York, that's really my own time.
Good for you. So let's talk a little bit about Montreal, because we do have viewers in that area too as well. I did see your tweet about the yummiest places to eat in Montreal. So run down a couple for folks living in that area or folks here who may want to travel for a good meal.
When people ask me that, I always say, oh my God, what do I do? What category?
Yeah, right.
But I really fell in love with this strange little kind of meat store and prepared food store, Crazy Schmock, which is in the Snowdon area of Montreal. And
interesting.
It's a Russian store with some Polish stuff too, and they just feed you like your Russian grandma just wants you to eat and eat and eat, and it's all excellent.
That's the way eating should be done. It should be an experience all the time. Let's segue right now to your book. This is hot off the press. This is why you took a bit of a sabbatical from 7 Days, Vermont, an Explorer's Guide. How did this opportunity come to be?
It was just something that really kind of fell into my lap, honestly. A previous author who had done it 2 years but had not done the last edition contacted me and said, hey, would you like to do this? And I was feeling like I wanted to do a little more travel writing, so I said, sure, I'll do this. And it had not occurred to me what a huge job that would be.
Huge.
Huge.
Talk about an undertaking.
Yeah.
My gosh, there are so many. I mean, this is over 500, just shy of 500
just
pages
about 500.
of vital information for foodies, Vermonters, those traveling. What would Vermonters gain from having a book like this in their collection?
What I learned, first of all, I learned about places even in Chittenden County that I wasn't aware of.
Okay.
But the big thing was all of the history that I learned, because you feel like you know local history to some extent, and I write about it with some regularity at 7 Days. But there were still a lot of things that I learned.
A lot. How did you decide what to put in the book?
Well, I didn't put things that I didn't think were worth it for people.
Interesting.
And that was something that I've explained to people. They're like, oh, why didn't you include this restaurant? Why didn't you include this museum? If it's not good, I'm not going to send you there.
So no fluff, no filler. This is the real deal here.
Exactly.
This is, I sort of compared it to when I was speaking with my executive producer, it's sort of the Rick Steves guide to Vermont.
But I'm way more fun.
You are more fun. I think you have a better taste palette too. So we can spend hours talking about food, talking about your book. What do you do away from work? It's hard to separate Alice Levitt. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you are constantly working, but what do you do? I mean, obviously you have to eat to survive, and I'm sure you approach every meal with enthusiasm, but what do you do when you're not focused on food, when you're not 7 days, when you're not a published author?
Well, even when I'm not focused on food for work,
You're
focused on food.
Exactly.
Yeah, from the time I was able to read, I've memorized menus. It's just, I call myself the culinary Rain Man. It's kind of bad because it never goes away.
You said it. It's better coming from you than someone else, right?
But yeah, so I never stop with the food, ever, ever, ever. But I also really love animals that may or may not become food.
You love them alive, you love them to die.
Yeah, I do. And
so funny.
one of the things that was really important to me to add to the book, cemeteries. I love
saw that.
cemeteries, and there wasn't really anything about them before. But that's my favorite kind of art.
Interesting.
It's history and art at once. And so I did do a bunch of cemetery touring
Yeah,
for
I
the
didn't
book.
want to bring that up, but I'm glad you did because it sort of caught me off guard. You're talking about bed and breakfast, you're talking about restaurants, and then there's a section on cemeteries. And I say, okay, if you maybe make unhealthy food choices, you'll end up in one. I didn't know what the segue was or the transition, but I'm glad that you brought that up. So when you dine, you said you have a boyfriend, but when you go out to eat as a critic to review a place, are you usually doing it alone? Do you bring friends with you to make it a more fun social
You need
experiment?
helpers because you
do?
can't just
Okay.
order a whole table of food just for yourself. They'll know
Okay.
what's going on. So you need at least one helper. I usually have 1 to 2 other people, and my boyfriend has gotten really sophisticated in the last 11 years that we've been together.
I bet. Now, does he cook as well?
No,
Are
not
you
at all.
Are you teaching him how to cook?
No, our deal is I cook, he cleans.
Okay, that's a good deal to have. So, aside from the book, what's next for you? Obviously, we know where to find you in 7 days. The next big project for Alice Levitt is...
I was just asked to do another travel guide, and I said, oh, hell no. So not that, but
Wow.
yeah.
Who approached you for that?
I don't know if I can say.
Okay, we won't say names.
But yeah,
Wow.
I said, So I might do other books, but
Yeah.
probably not something quite like that.
See, but it has to come as a compliment. The fact that this is your first stab at a travel guide and people are already approaching you again.
Yeah.
Where did the journalism bug bite you? When did you realize that you wanted to tie in your love of food with your talent?
Well, journalism happened when I was 13. I started a cult film review zine.
What?
You remember
cult film
zines?
Zine. I don't
Yeah,
even...
so it's a self-published magazine. It was a big thing in the 90s.
Interesting.
And so I was really into cult film and foreign film. And so like I had a French coming of age issue.
Wow. At 13.
Yeah, I was that kind of kid.
Wow.
And so that was really the beginning. But I really wanted to grow up to be a forensic anthropologist, probably.
Interesting.
Or a rock star,
Back
one
to
or
the
the
cemeteries,
other.
right?
But but I became seriously ill when I was 15.
Okay.
And so I am a 10th grade dropout.
Wow.
So
Seriously ill. We were talking a little bit before the show started about your illness. Things are good now? You're
yeah,
in
I'm fine
recovery?
now. I
Perfect.
was bedridden with Lyme disease for almost 7 years.
Wow.
And I was having daily seizures. I had to relearn to walk
Oh my goodness.
and to sit up. I couldn't sit up on my own for a couple years.
Unbelievable. So you
But-
spent hours upon hours in your bed. Were you focused on your writing? Were you
A lot of
watching
the time I
TV?
couldn't even really do that. It took me some time to even understand TV.
Wow.
I watched a lot of Teletubbies early on
You
because
did.
I could follow that. Teletubbies and music videos.
So you're showing your age now, but
Yeah.
hey, it's a PBS shout out. We appreciate that. Let's talk about what brought you to Vermont. How did you end up here?
Well, in 1998, the Lyme line was Rutland, and my mom wanted to prevent me from getting reinfected. So one of my brothers lived in Essex at the time, so she said, let's hop over and you will
Wow.
not get reinfected. And it seemed like I was getting better at that point,
Wow.
but then it turned out I wasn't. And so we were driving back and forth a few times a week to Connecticut
my
to see
goodness.
doctors.
Wow. So entire family relocated up
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
Still here?
Even Grandma is here.
Wow, very nice. Whereabouts are they? Chittenden County?
Uh-huh,
or-
yep,
Excellent.
everyone's in Chittenden County.
So they must be very proud.
I hope so.
I think so.
I hope they're not embarrassed.
Wow. No, I think that they would be incredibly proud of not only the brand that you've built for yourself, but the prestige that comes along with your critiques, your reviews. What else do you want to tell us?
What else do I want to tell you?
This is your time to shine.
Should I
Food,
start
we talked about your
singing?
book. Don't sing. No. If you had to pick one form of media, is it book? Is it print journalism? Is it we saw your work with television?
It's TV.
Is it
I
TV?
enjoy TV the most. It really combines my passions the
You're-
most readily.
You're in your sweet spot, I can
Yeah.
tell. It's definitely a position where you seem very comfortable.
I like to talk.
I can tell. You like to talk and you like to eat. So that is something that I can totally relate to as well. Alice, I thank you so very much for being here today. And we thank the folks at home as well for watching. We want to connect with you and keep the conversation going. You can always reach out with feedback and ideas at connect@vermontpbs.org and get caught up on extra episodes and more material at vpt.org. We'll see you next time.